The Islamic civilization started from the beginning by focusing and insisting on the position of values in civilization. So it's not the matter of building, as we mentioned before, high towers only, or be advanced in technology, in science, as we will see later on contributions of Muslim scholars. But as a matter of fact, it insisted from the early beginning that civilization and the civilized community or society, it meant to fulfill certain level of practicing the fundamental values: justice, equality, and freedom. So that was clear from the previous chapter when we talked about peaceful coexistence in the Muslim community and discussed how practically the Prophet, peace be upon him, established these three fundamental principles in life of individuals and in life of community or society. But today, we will start from the early beginning, the story of Islamic civilization, which may start from the first word revealed to the Prophet, peace be upon him. If you can recall this word, read or iqra. Read or iqra was the first word revealed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the cave of Hira. What is actually the real meaning of this word is not just the linguistic meaning. It's not just to read or recite. Because as we mentioned and elaborated previously, it is not the matter of reading a book or the Quran as some Muslims may think from the beginning. No, because there was no Quran at that time. It was the first word revealed to him. So there was no Quran. But it was read in the meaning or in the sense of observing. Observing what? Observing what he was actually doing at that time, because it has been known from his life, his early life before Islam, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was spending nights and days for certain periods in order to contemplate, to think, to ask, to investigate, to ask questions, and repeated on asking certain questions about what? About the creation, about the Creator, about the purpose of life, the purpose of death, the purpose of afterlife. Why all these questions have no answer in the life of Meccans? All these questions were actually in his mind while he was contemplating in cave of Hira. So many people, when it comes to the story of cave of Hira, they think that he was worshipping. But as a matter of fact, the meaning or the concept of worship at that time, it can't be a praying or fasting or whatever. It's not possible, because there was no Sharia, there was no teaching, there was no Islamic teaching, there was no Islam at that time. But it is the worship in the sense or in the perspective of contemplating. Do we consider contemplating as a part of worship or ibadah? Definitely. That's why we will see later on how Islam and Quran encourages people from the beginning to practicing the worship of contemplation. Why? Because for sure it leads to observation of laws of the universe. And once people start to be engaged in that process, for sure they will reach the beginning of civilization. Civilization or innovations or contributions, as we will see later on in different fields of knowledge and science, can't be started without observation. And in order to start with experiments, observation, you need to start by contemplating whatever you see around you. And that's exactly what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was doing at that time. So the first word revealed to him at that time in Cave Hira, telling him three times repeating, read, read, read. And his answer, as you all know, that ما أنا بقارئ, what to read. Besides that, he was illiterate and there was no book and nothing in front of him. So how come this command is starting to insist on reading? And then the next verse of this Surah Al-Alaq, revealed to him, started to explain and give him some sort of hints. Read in the name of your Lord. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Read in the name of your Lord who created. Created what? Created whatever you are looking at. And definitely, what was in front of him? The horizon. Everything in front of him. Everything in front of him which was actually insisting on finding answer for the big questions. What is the story behind the creation of this universe? What is the purpose of the creation itself? Why it's there? Why we people have been created on this earth? To fulfill certain purposes, for sure. Because the order, the system, the creation itself leads to the answer of these questions. So here from the early beginning, the Quran is starting to convey the message. Not the message of religion far from civilization. Definitely not. Then what is it? It is civilization go side by side with religion. As a matter of fact, the concept of religion in Islam, it is based on the concept of civilization from the beginning, clearly from the beginning. What does this mean? It means if you can't be civilized, of course, according to what the Quran is going to tell us and reveal to us at that time, then you will not be reaching the highest level of ibadah and the highest level of being religious, if we would like to say that. So the more you will be civilized in that sense, the more you will be closer and getting closer to Allah, to the Creator. So civilization is the first and the most influential part in religion, in the concept of religion in Islam. Now here, people may think, when it comes to the matter of religion, people may think, well, religion is just way of life. Religion is just to practice your worship, your ibadah, whatever it is. But what about civilization? How come we keep on saying that, no, religion and civilization in Islam goes side by side? Here it comes the answer. Because as we said, Islam as a religion, it means that it is a religion of civilization. So individuals, people, communities, states, which they believe in Islam and in following Islamic teachings, they have to be civilized in all aspects of civilization, as we will see later on. Why? Because otherwise they did not actually get the real message of Islam. The real message of Islam started from the early and the first word, read. And if we get it right, then for sure we will understand why civilization is the most important component and the first component in building Islamic teachings. The second remark here, before we start, Muslims, the first generation of Muslims, whom they believed and they received the message of the Quran clearly, they were well aware of this message. Because of that, they started to build the foundation of civilization. Civilization, just like any other building in the entire world, you can't start without foundation. You need, first of all, to build the foundation, and then you start to build, of course, certain levels of your building. But if you don't have a strong and solid foundation, for this building, for sure you can't actually go up at all. And this is, of course, known for everyone. Engineerings, everyone. People know that. So what is the foundation of civilization? As we said before, it's directly linked to the concept of Tawheed. How can we relate the concept of Tawheed to the concept of civilization? Because when we talk about civilization, we are talking about Tawheed. In which sense? As we said, from the early beginning, the Prophet, peace be upon him, is starting to telling us that, okay, read in the name of your Lord, who created. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. This is the ayah. This is the verse. So when you say read in the name of your Lord, what is this if it is not Tawheed? Introducing the concept of Tawheed. In which sense? In which sense? In the sense of believing that behind this universe, this magnificent universe and creation, there is the Creator. And as we all know, this is the concept of Tawheed. To believe in the existence of Allah. To believe in the existence of the Creator. How to believe in the existence of Creator if you don't see Him? Because some people, they believe that, or they think that I would believe in things which I witness, which I can see, which I can touch, I can hear. And in that sense, according to this ayah and according to Islamic teachings, we are unable actually to see Allah or God. So how do you prove that He is existent? As we said, from the early, the answer is there in that verse. Read in the name of your Lord who created. So you don't see or witness the Creator, but you witness what? What He have been created. So this creation, what He has created, is leading me to the Creator. Yes, I don't see Him because I as a human being, I am quite limited. And He is unlimited. So He's absolute. I don't see Him. But I do see His creation. And this creation is a proof and evidence for His existence. You see? What does this mean? Again, it means that once you start to believe, you start to observe more and more. Once you start to observe the creation around, or the universe around you, you will start to observe laws of nature, isn't it? And once you start to observe laws of nature, that for sure will lead you to where? To innovation, isn't it? What is the innovation if it is not starting by observing laws of nature? And making again and again and being engaged in certain experiments and observations, which for sure will lead you to something which you will innovate. And here it comes, the message of the Quran, which has been understood by the first generation of Muslims. Muslims, the first generation in particular, understood the message of the Quran. Understood that observation of laws of nature and going here and there and finding out certain answers for questions related to nature and creation is part of ibadah, part of worship, part of their tawheed, part of their faith. So the more they will be engaged in that, the more will be closer to God, to Allah. So they started to be engaged in all these activities. What was the outcome for these activities? Their contributions. As we will see later on in the last part of this chapter, Islamic civilization, in your textbook, you will see how Muslims were magnificently contributed to different fields of knowledge and science. physics, medicine, pharmacy, architecture, engineering, literature, art, everything. They did not even left one field without touching it with their own experiences and their own actually adding and contribution. They considered all these contributions as part of their worship and faith. You see how? So the more they will be advanced in physics, in mathematics, in algebra, for example, you will see different examples. Many names, lists of names of Muslim scholars, different fields, nothing left. Because of what? What was their motivation? How those people at that early age were inspired with all these motivation. Because of what? Because of faith, because of tawheed, because they believe that this is the most important part in their faith. And this is the part of ibadah or worship. So they did not waste time in studying and finding out in questions like related to physics or to chemistry or to art. Definitely not. Why? Because this is the real job that they're supposed to fulfill. You see the point here? So people, when they are motivated and inspired with such things, for sure their advancement, their contributions will be meaningful. And that's exactly what happened in the Islamic civilization, as we will see. Something else, the third remark, when we talk about Islamic civilization, in order to realize what sort of changes, dramatic changes brought to Arabia at that time, we need to compare and to look at the situation in Arabia before the message of Islam. And then we compare it to the situation after the message of Islam later on. Why? To see the differences. Again, when you talk about civilization, especially Islamic civilization, we are not talking about physics, chemistry, mathematics only. We are talking about the human being himself. And that is what one of the most important factors which actually make the Islamic civilization different from any other civilization, ancient or contemporary. Because of what? Because the Islamic civilization is focusing on humanity in the first place. So even when it comes to all these contributions or innovations, scientific innovations, it's because of serving humanity. So here, the philosophy, if we may say, of science is again related to the concept of tawheed and serving humanity. Because the result and the outcome of tawheed is to serve humanity. The more you serve, the more you will be kind, the more you give, the more you will be closer to Allah, according to many sayings, of course, in the Quran or verses in the Quran and in the prophetic sunnah. So here we see the answer. You see how tawheed is connected to every aspect of civilization. So civilization is not meant to serve one level or one aspect of a human life and forgetting about other aspects. It keeps the balance in one's life. It's satisfying his spiritual needs and mental needs, and at the same time never forgetting physical needs. You see the point? While when we look at some other civilizations, including our contemporary civilization, we see how far these civilizations in focusing and insisting on serving humanity, okay, but from which side? The physical needs, isn't it? Materialistic aspects. But in many cases, if it is not in all cases, forgetting about spiritual aspects in human lives. Focusing on what we eat, what we wear, how do we enjoy life. That's great, it's fine, it's okay. Unless it contradicts and prevents us from looking at the other side and keeping the balance between our spiritual needs and physical needs. This is what the Islamic civilization never forget. Islamic civilization focusing on humanity as one blend, one mixture of spirit, soul, and physical needs at the same time, body. So the needs of the body is there. We see it, and we see all these materialistic contributions of Muslim scholars. At the same time, we see similar contributions in the spiritual perspective and aspects. That's why we see tremendous number of books written by Muslim scholars talking about spirituality, talking about morals, talking about values. Because of what? Because civilization is not supposed to mean one aspect and forgetting about the other aspect. This is one of the most important remarks about the Islamic civilization. Now, let us move to something else. We mentioned it earlier. We said, if we would like to be fair and to see what sort of tremendous changes brought by the Islamic civilization or the Quran, we need to look at the situation in Arabia before Islam. Let us take certain examples which we already mentioned earlier. One of these aspects, the religion itself. When it comes to the religion or the religious aspect, we see before Islam, what was spread there in Arabia? What sort of worship in Arabia was there?
Idol worship.
Paganism, idol worship. And it was actually exported from where? From Syria, from other parts in Arabia, and rooted in Mecca. What is Mecca? Mecca, even before Kaaba, even before Islam, it was house of God. Arabs call it house of God. It was a holy place to worship God, built by a prophet Abraham, peace be upon him. Okay, so how come the message of Abraham, peace be upon him, is very clear, talking about Tawheed? For sure. He was against paganism, against worshipping idols. So how come in that house of God, Arabs they call it like this, they put more than 360 idols around the Kaaba? How come? Because of what? Because of the ignorance of these people. Because they were far from civilization. They were uncivilized. So here, the concept of civilization is not just related to contributions or certain contributions in physics, in math, in etc. No. From the early beginning, the concept of religion. So the concept of religion is not there. Why? Because people at that time, they were actually worshipping idols. What's wrong with worshipping idols? Why did they worship idols? Because they were convinced that this is the best religion? Is it because of that? No. Because it has been mentioned actually in the Quran, in many chapters and surahs, the Quran is telling us stories about Abraham, peace be upon him. That there was a dialogue between him and his people, his nation. So once he was discussing with them, you people, how come you are making these idols out of stones, out of mud, out of different things. And then, after you are making them, you come and worshiping them and consulting them in every single thing in your life. How come? And then, once it has been mentioned, that they started for a second to think about it. Oh, yes, it seems that you are right. And then all of a sudden, they answered again and they said something different. But our fathers and grandfathers, all of them are worshipping these idols. So how do you want us to leave our worship for idols and follow a new religion? You see here? So as a matter of fact, from the early beginning, the concept of religion there is not because they were convinced with worshipping idols at all. Then what is it? It's just that they were following their fathers' steps blindly. This is the point. And for sure, when you follow someone, including your parents, blindly, are you civilized in that case or far from civilization? For sure, far from civilization. Why? Because civilization based on using your mind. And that's exactly what the Quran was doing. So from the early beginning, the Quran is starting, building foundation of civilization through what? Telling people that, see people, unless you free your minds from all these chains, you won't be able to have strong faith and iman or tawheed. So free yourself. Free yourself from what? From all these chains. What sort of chains? Ignorance. A blind imitation, because people, they imitate their parents in Arabia and in other places blindly, without even asking themselves certain questions about why and how and what. It has nothing to do with respect, the concept of respect, as we said earlier. Accept does not mean respect, and respect does not mean accept. So I may respect my parents, I have to respect my parents, but not necessarily I'm supposed to accept whatever they were telling me or insisting on me. Why? Because I have my own mind. And that's what the Quran was telling them. So that's why we see many verses in the Quran talking about the relation between generations and parents. أَوَلَوْ كَانَ آبَاؤُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ. Meaning, are you going to follow your fathers even if they have no sense of mind? Even if their questions or their sayings meaningless? Even if they are or they have already lived their life without purposes, realizing that there is a purpose behind creation? Are you going to do the same? They committed certain mistakes in their life. Are you going to make the same mistakes again and again and again? Is this the meaning of parenting? Definitely not. So the first thing the Quran is starting in that case is not to tell them that you people, you have to believe in Allah and in the one. No. The first thing he did is to free the minds of people. How do you free minds of people? Let them ask questions. That's why the Quran as a book is full of questions. Full of questions. And sometimes we have certain questions, open-end questions. So many times in the Quran we don't see answers for questions. Just the question. Why? Because Quran is insisting you must find the answer by yourself. Then what the Quran is doing? The Quran is just telling and showing us how to answer this question. But who is going to answer this question is you as a human being. You see the difference here? So for sure, Tawheed as a concept is one of the most important civilizational steps taken in the Quran. Why? Because Tawheed simply is freedom. This is Tawheed, equal freedom. Freedom of what? Of all the chains which have been actually prevented people or humanity from thinking, asking questions, and taking the right or the appropriate decisions in their life. Related to Tawheed, related to religion, related to morals. Many practices, many social unjust practices in Arabia were quite spread there. Because of what? Like killing infant girls. Because of what? Because they believed in it. Sometimes they didn't even ask a question about it. They were just doing it and repeatedly practicing it again and again, generation over generation, without giving themselves a chance to ask a question, why I am doing this. So because of that, Tawheed is one of the most important concepts in civilization, according to the Islamic perspective. So you can't have civilization in Islam without Tawheed? Definitely you can't have it. Tawheed is the beginning. But which Tawheed? What sort of Tawheed? Tawheed is just to witness that there is no God but Allah? No, in that sense it's not just a saying. It's a saying which will change my entire life. In the sense that this saying is freeing people from all the chains which we mentioned. What else? That all these changes which will start to be in my life according to the concept of Tawheed be related to worship, will be related to my faith. You remember when I mentioned something about the different ideas and thoughts about faith of Muslims or many Muslims today and their faith or Tawheed during the time of the Prophet? What did we say? Said something quite interesting, but unfortunately it's real, it's there. Some Muslims, if it is not many Muslims today, they inherited their faith, inherited their Tawheed. What's wrong with this? Tawheed is not to be inherited. Tawheed is to be practiced and chosen by yourself. What does this mean? It means, okay, fine, you have been born in a Muslim family, but it's your decision and it's your life to understand what is this Tawheed. Your responsibility to practice it. Your parents, they brought you as a Muslim, fine, but it's your own responsibility to refresh this faith and Tawheed. You see? And recharge it from one time to another. And you won't be able to recharge it unless you understand how the concept of Tawheed is started. You see the point? So the foundation of Islamic civilization is Tawheed. How do you explain this? Tawheed is freeing people. And you can't actually be civilized unless you are free. If you still feeling the concept of slavery, you remember when we mentioned something about slavery? Said yes, as a concept, it's, as we all know, it's very negative. But unfortunately, some people, they are unfree from within. They are free from outside, but they are unfree from within. So what the Quran is doing through Tawheed, freeing people from inside and outside. Unless they do so and they reach this level of Tawheed, they won't be able to build civilization. Is it clear? So the foundation of Islamic civilization is not contributions of Muslims to science and all fields of knowledge. The real contribution to civilization, human civilization, is the concept of Tawheed. Why? because this is the right foundation for any civilization. Civilization which ignore humanity and ignore the human needs in spiritual aspects or mental aspects can't be called a civilization. Civilization, if it is just focusing on materialistic aspects and physical needs, it's not a full civilization. It's not a comprehensive civilization. There is something missing because a human at the end is not just a body. It's a blend of a spirit or soul and body. That's why any real civilization is supposed to fulfill the two sides: spiritual, mental, and physical.